Second question concerns the 10th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. And we'd like to know what that signifies to you. For those in the audience who don't know, the 10th Amendment states that the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people.
The 10th Amendment, and that amendment, by the way, there was a resolution introduced in the State Senate this year by Senator Mooney. I'm one of the co-sponsors that sends the message to the federal government that, you know, basically read the 10th Amendment. You can see it's Senate Joint Resolution 1 if you go to the website. And it basically says to the federal government, pay attention to the 10th Amendment, because increasingly what the federal government is doing is they're coming into states and either telling you what to do, or what they're doing is they take our tax money, they send it to Washington, and then say, you know what, if you don't do what we want you to do, then we're not giving you that money back. Now there's something wrong with that, because that's not their money. That's our money we send to Washington. And when we send it to a Department of Education that should be abolished, and I'll tell you that's a position I take, and I take strongly, get rid of that federal Department of Education. What in the world could some bureaucrat in Washington know about educating people throughout this 1st Congressional District? That's not where those decisions, first of all, the best decision is made in the home, the second best decision made in the local school, and then maybe the county board, but the last thing I want is either the state board or some bureaucrat down in Washington making a decision about how to educate our children. It's just plain wrong. That's a perfect example of where the Constitution says nothing about education. We've created a tens of billions of dollar department in Washington to tell us how we're supposed to educate our children. What an insult it is. But not a surprise from this government, because that's what this government tells us. This government tells us we know better than you. How could you possibly know what health care you really want? We know what's better for you. That's the way we've been treated for the last year. It's, you know, and then they have the election in Massachusetts. The American public, I don't think they could have sent a clearer message. And they have the nerve. Nancy Pelosi has the nerve to go and say, well, I don't really care what you think. We're pushing through the health care bill. You know, if we got to get out there every day on the streets from now until next November 2nd, when we get to change what's going on there, we may have to do that, because they're going to have to listen, because what's going on is just wrong. And that's an example of where the federal government has no rights, and in fact, even the state probably, you know, as I say, even the state shouldn't be holding that money over the heads of the counties. Those education decisions should be made locally. That's the brilliance of the 10th Amendment. The best decisions are the local decisions, and the Founding Fathers realized it.
Thank you. What specifically would you do to restore the financial health of the United States? A couple of key areas that we're looking at is your opinion on the Fed. Would you propose any changes in the tax structure? And as the bailout money to the banks is being repaid, what do you think should be done with that return of money?
Okay, let me start with the first one, the bailout money. That's a simple one. Return, just pay down the debt. There's no question about it. You know, these schemes they're cooking up now, where we're going to take the unused money here, we're going to spend it for something. But first of all, you don't even have the money. You printed it. And you printed it with an IOU that my children, my grandchildren are going to have to pay. That's just wrong. So what do you got to do to solve the deficit problem? First thing is, I tell you, because it kind of works in the state, is we ought to have a balanced budget amendment to the federal Constitution. That's the bottom line. They have got to stop printing and borrowing money to pay their bills. You and I can't do it in our houses. Why in the world are we allowing them to do it in Washington? You know, last week, the big news this week, early this week, should have been that president's budget. There was a $3.8 trillion with $1.6 trillion deficit. Now I'm old enough, many of you are here, to remember when it was a big news that our entire federal deficit budget went over $1 trillion. That was a few years back. We exceeded $1 trillion. We're talking about the deficit being $1 trillion now, and we've got a president stands up and says, "Oh, I have, you know, this budget actually solves the deficit problem." This is the same thing we heard about health. Who do they think they're talking to? My gosh, we understand you can't spend $3.8 trillion. By the way, I was figuring out with my daughter in the car yesterday. We were driving somewhere, and I said, "Do you have any idea how much $1 trillion is?" If you took a $100 bill every second, you were counting $100 bills every second, do you know how many years it would take you to count $1 trillion? 250 years. Counting a $100 bill every second for the next 250 years. That's the amount, and our deficit next year is $1.6 trillion. It's more than that. and we got a president who just, I mean, it's incredible. The budget is, oh yeah, we're gonna cap the budget 3 years down the line, and we're gonna save this, but it's not gonna start till a little later, and it's only gonna be a very small amount. It's ridiculous. If we ran our houses that way, we would be in court. We literally, they'd come and take our possessions if we ran our family that way. They'd take our children from us because we're not the deal, right? That's the way we're being dealt with by the federal government. It's just wrong.